their resumes, actually. I think you were able to look through. They're all very, very qualified. And then yourself and I, and my mother is currently acting as secretary. So, but I would like to keep this number no more than 4 or 5 people, because the larger your board gets, the more difficult it is to pass decisions and make changes within the organization. And we want to keep it flexible. And then we have our KPDF, which is Kenyan Pastoral Development Fund. And this is our tax exempt organization in Kenya. So I'm just putting Kenyan board. And they are tax exempt within Kenya, an international tax exempt organization. So I funded this organization originally in Kenya, and then I found 4 individuals. Right now, there's 3 people sitting on the board there that are more relevant to holistic land management in Kenya. One is Richard Hatfield. He runs, I don't know why, I just lost the name of their organization. No, it's, anyway, so Richard Hatfield runs the biggest holistic land management program in East Africa, and he's friends and colleagues with Alan Savory that developed holistic land management. I was actually referred by Alan Savory to Richard Hatfield and Simon, one of his colleagues. Richard is a white Kenyan. He was born in Kenya, in the Laikipia region, but he studied in Oklahoma. He's a biologist. And I have a very, very long interview that's in the final stages of editing, so you'll be able to watch him talk for an hour about holistic land management. You'll get a really good sense of how knowledgeable he is on the subject. And then there's 2 other individuals that run a holistic land management program. You would not believe this program. I can't wait to take you to it. There are a couple that are, everyone who's on the board, it just happened that way. It wasn't a plan. See, originally I wanted the indigenous elders that I was working with to sit on the board. But the issue with that is that to sit on the board, you have to have free time, and you can't be compensated for the time that you're putting into it. So all of those individuals, not only do they have a full schedule, but they need to be compensated for any time that they're putting in. And it's difficult for them to communicate digitally. So talking over the phone or using Skype isn't so much of an option, because they're from different regions of Kenya and they have different accents. And it's not easy for them to understand. They're 60-year-old indigenous elders. So we decided that how we wanted to do is we wanted to set up the Kenyan board with people, 1 person from each county that we're running a program in. That I visit? Oh, I visited hundreds of villages. And there's 800,000 people, they say, but it's more like probably up to like 1 million to 1.1, because a lot of people aren't registered. They don't have a birth certificate, so it's really difficult to understand how many people are being born. So you have about 800,000 people, all the way from the Serengeti up to Masai Mara Reserve through Samburu into northern Kenya. They're all pastoral tribes. So the Kenyan board consists of experts in holistic land management that are running conservation conservancies or are doing holistic land management with indigenous communities. The people that are running the holistic land management project, who will be, so let's go to the next part. Ooh, the clock is ticking. So next we have our county consultants. And our county consultants, it's my sister's microwaving some tea. So next we have our county consultants. And our county consultants, every county that we go in. So each county, right now we're working in 4 counties. So we've only selected 3 representative board members. So we haven't found our board member yet for Samburu area. I will send him an exact map of where we're working. He will get all of this information from Richard Hatfield. Richard Hatfield has been working for 7 years now collecting data and information on holistic land management in these different regions. Well, exactly, but as I was talking to you, that's why microchipping, that's why putting up a mesh network and microchipping the cattle and taking transects on top of doing all of the satellite, collecting data from the satellite and weather, all of that information is important and needs to be compiled into one computer program so we can see exactly how cattle are affecting the land. We need to see exactly how much grass is being regenerated, if holistic land management is done properly, and if done improperly, how much vegetation we're losing, and how that impacts climate change. Of course, if you went through the Mosero proposal, that's that's our ground project, right? That's our first project that we're looking to expand on. So much information. Yeah. Sorry, just getting this out for you. No, I think that he's welding in his shop. So our tree is growing. So here we have our 4 members. Current 3. Okay, so here we have currently 5 members, ICCS International. We have KPDF, Kenyan Pastoral Development Fund, and there's 3 members here because we're currently working in 3 counties. But we're also going to be working in Kajiado. I've already visited and talked to all of the different chiefs for Kajiado in Amboseli. So that's a real priority to get someone representing that area. But these 3 individuals will select someone from Kajiado to sit on the Kenyan Pastoral Development Fund. Okay. So then what we have is our county consultants. So each county, let me go into the office. Yeah, my sister's husband just got home from work. We have an office though, so we should use it. Brighten it up in here. All right. Good deal. So, back to what I was saying. I was on our, so each county that we're working in, originally I wanted the elders to sit on the board, represented the entire Kenya. So with nonprofit law, you can't have board members getting paid or compensated for their time. That's what they have to do as a position. So they do this thing where they give people sitting fees and travel expenses, and it just racks up administrative costs in an organization. It's really not cost efficient, and the more administrative costs that your organization has, the less you don't want to have a high administrative cost. You want as low as that percentage to be as low as possible. Because they're 95% going into administration and 5% is going to their cause. So we want to keep that percentage from 7 to 10%. That means that we have to put that much more money into the projects on the ground for whoever's getting paid. Whoever's being compensated, whoever's getting paid. So we've created a structure where the people that are doing the work are actually the project, rather than like they're getting paid not as a board member or an administrator, but into project costs. So the money's going directly to the cause, so that takes all of that out of administration costs. Yes, that's project costs. That's not administrative. So what these guys do, for example, our first one that's been developed is the same place as our first program. And this is in Narok County. Narok County, I have 3 individuals, and they're looking for a 4th. So one of them is Freddie Kamaki. You also got his resume, and Pario. And then Julius is sending me his resume. They're all incredibly qualified to do this work. And what they're doing is they're developing all of our programs. So they're the people. Pario is the administrator of Masai Mara University. He was the first person to work with World Vision in Mosoro and Narok County. They're the people who should be in charge of what's going on the ground. And it's the only way to make it sustainable. Because if you hire outside people to come in and do the work, as soon as they leave, nothing's built and nothing's done. So, but we made it to where instead of putting these people on the Kenyan board, we've actually had them create their own business. So these 3 individuals, and they're going to find a 4th. They're looking for someone who will round out, someone who has a different skill set than what they have. So these 3 individuals, Freddie, Pario, and Julius, are experts in nonprofit development and pastoral development. And Freddie and Pario developed the proposal, the Mosoro proposal. That was the first Mosoro proposal that we developed. And what they're going to do is they're going to start their own consultancy agency. So they're getting registered as a business. So we will hire them in project costs to do all the work on the ground. So the way that we set it up is I personally help them get started with their office space so that they can start working. So they have an office space right now. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have our project in Mosoro. And Mosoro is a really, really unique place because it's all of the same clan of the Maasai tribe. So there's different clans of the Maasai tribe, and they're all Pruko. So when you have different clans of the Samburu tribe, so they're different family clans. They're subclans, exactly. So subclans don't work well together. It's more difficult to work with people that aren't from the same family groups because they don't share grazing land. They compete for grazing land. And they have different dialects, they have some different customs. So originally I was doing research in Ilingwesi, which is where Richard is from. He's from Laikipia County, and the biggest holistic land management project that has been ongoing for 5 years in Kenya, where the most data has been collected, is in Ilingwesi. And I spent, of course, Richard can send you the data. So Richard is, this is why it was so important to get the Kenyan Development or Kenyan Pastoral Development Fund established, because then these people that have all this data actually are profiting from success of our projects. They're profiting because the more data that's collected on holistic land management, the more jobs that they get from communities coming in and paying them to be consultants. They're biologists for holistic land management. But they already have an awesome organization there that's doing that. But the Maasai people aren't familiar with holistic land management because it's a new concept that's coming in. So us actually getting communities using holistic management, creating that data, them visually being able to see, creating a large network of people that are using holistic land management, that are using holistic land management helps them. The more data that's there, the more people that know that holistic land management is successful, the more money they will make with their consultancy firms. Yeah, most of it's funded by grants. Like most of their trainings are funded by different large organizations. World Vision or the World Bank fund a lot of their projects, or different conservancies. I'm sure that there's grants that they get. The United Nations, the UN on desertification, combat desertification. Do you know that? United Nations combating desertification. They give a lot of money into holistic land management. They have an entire division set aside for combating desertification. Yeah, I'll send you the link to it. UNCDD. Yeah, UNCCD. That's what it is. Yeah, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So they give a lot of money to holistic land management research, but Kenya is not the only area doing holistic land management research. It's being done all over the world. Anybody who's doing holistic land management in Kenya has a direct relationship with Richard Hadfield. So it's really, really wonderful to be working with these people because you have access to all of their data, and by helping them, the other way that them being on our board helps them is because they can funnel money through our 501c3 for their projects. Well, so I mean, for example, they want to set up a school. We're Indigenous Cultural Conservation Society. So if education is an aspect of conservation, so we can, if they have a donor that wants a tax exemption, and they just have to sign the check to us, and we can give it straight to the Kenyan Pastoral Development Fund and fund any project that they want to fund. That's a huge bonus for all of these individuals that are sitting on that board. Because they don't have 501c3s in the States. They're not even American citizens. So we have our project in Mosoro. So I was explaining it to you. Mosoro is a very unique place because they don't have any tourism, almost no tourism at all, which is a good thing actually, because there's less erosion of culture when because they're entirely a pastoral society. That's their only revenue. And the UN just gave them, or the EU, sorry, excuse me, the EU just funded. Thank you. Just funded a massive. It's all in the proposal that I sent you. It's all in the proposal they sent you. But they just funded massive projects in Mosoro for an agricultural project. So they're going to be bringing in a lot of revenue from selling from the irrigation scheme that's been set up there, and they won't be working in it. So they'll be making money, but not working there. The whole community, Mosoro community, because they're a communally owned land. That's the other thing. Mosoro is the last communally owned land in Narok County, which is the second wealthiest county in Kenya, Tanzania. No, their wealth comes from tourism, from Masai Mara and agriculture, maize. They produce 80% of Kenya's uh, maize, wheat, and barley. Like it's a massive agricultural area. All right, County. It's really not so much. There's huge potential for growth in those areas, and doing organic farming and holistic management of agriculture as well. It's really important that this agricultural project in Mosoro is a holistic agricultural project. We want to make sure that we're not only holistically managing the cattle in that area, but we're also holistically managing the agriculture so it doesn't affect the climate. And that's what's so amazing about the couple that we've selected to represent Narok County. Yeah, and green farming is also very important because if you over irrigate, there's just so much potential for doing green agriculture. It's very important because people are going to are going to continue to use agriculture. We're not going to convince everyone to stop farming and just ranch cattle. The Maasai have a proverb. They say, with the when the dead tree falls in the forest, it takes down the healthy tree. That's the point. Is we have to be working on it on angles from everywhere, and nearly every country has an indigenous population that has the potential to to push over that first domino, to raise awareness for how you can really prosper holistically managing your land. Holistic land management doesn't just refer to holistic plant grazing. So in Mosoro, the wonderful thing about the couple that is going to represent the board for Narok County is they're already running the most successful holistic land management program in Kenya, in my opinion, of what I've seen. It's incredible. I went out there the last time. You see, it's just bare, just rocks and desert, and then all of a sudden you come up to their conservancy, and it's green and lush, and they have tons of bees. They're harvesting honey, and their cattle are. It's an oasis in all of this bare land, and it's just beautiful. And they're also doing holistic agriculture. And they have a slaughterhouse there that is using all the runoff and waste from the slaughterhouse to grow vegetables. I mean, it's an oasis. And they're really showing people, everyone around them living in those communities, how to start their own sales yards, right? How much it is to invest in a weight machine, to move them into the next generation of how you buy and sell cattle, which isn't important because it's an industry. And the Maasai are at some point going to have to at least partially go into that industry in order to maintain their land and their status in life. And the great thing about this is all of it's organic, grass fed. They're not fed anything but grass. It's lean, it's healthy meat. It's how every single country should be producing their meat. Yeah, they're exporting. Well, that's one interesting thing that they're doing in Masai Mara is they've started exporting to the Middle East. So, but mostly just goats and sheep. But they've found a market, and they're teaching people how they can actually, in some way, sell at the right time, right before droughts hit, and buy at the right time for it to be profitable. And that's another aspect that needs to be researched. What's the real international market for this product? So, but I'm not an expert on all these subjects. I can only, relate to you what I have learned. When you sit down when you come to Kenya and you sit down with these individuals, you will be shocked because they live this. This is their entire lives. So in Mosoro, we have, you looked at the population of the paper, like I don't know if you were able. So you have a community, and then there's 4 different divisions of that area, and they've broken it down. So basically, what we've done in Mosoro is it's a traditional tribal area. It's communally owned. They have this new agricultural belt that's going in. All of it's paid for. And they're going to be selling crops. And in the next 2 years, they're going to start profiting a lot of money from that irrigation scheme that's been put in. Well, it doesn't have to be. It's the great potential about Mosoro is that it's the last area of communally owned land. We don't want it to be subdivided. Subdivision is cancerous to pastoralism. The only way we can keep that from happening is showing them how they can continue to prosper as pastoralists. Because right now, their land's turning to desert, and they see no future on that land. Their cows are dying. All of their kids are off in boarding school. I mean, what are you doing?
Hey, I'm gonna start going for a walk and stuff.
Yeah.
Hey,
The baby due?
8
Eh,
days.
8 days. 8 days from today, the baby is due. So it could come anytime. She's going on a walk. It might just come tonight. Going to jog.
Taking the garbage out. I'm gonna check the mail. I'm gonna do stuff like that.
Please shut the door, Brett. Thank you. She's a busybody. So Mosoro is a great potential because the biggest reason is because it has revenue coming in. So these people have money coming in from the irrigation scheme. They don't need to subdivide. But they're the youth that are coming back from school don't see any future on that land. Even with the irrigation scheme there, they're not thinking about the potential of the resources on that land, of the irrigation scheme, of the water. They're not thinking about the potential of pastoralism that land has. They're just thinking, give me my $5,000 and I'm going to go and I'm going to spend it in 1 year and I'm going to be broke and have no land and no cattle and no future because there's no jobs for a Maasai with a 4-year degree. I'm sure you could stay in an Indian tent if you wanted to, but the mud huts are very comfortable. Typical Mzungu. That's what they would call you. Did you see the crazy Mzungu? It is going to be an awesome project, but the great thing about Mosoro is it's our pilot project. We have time to get everything right over the next 2 years, putting all of our focus on Mosoro, and we are ready. This is the progress that we've made in Mosoro. So I've explained to you Mosoro's situation. So I've been going there for 2 years. I've been going to Mosoro and talking with the community elders over the last 2 years. I've been working with specifically just this community. And it was slow, because we didn't want to come in like the thing, yeah. Well, they didn't. The videos changed my life, but they didn't get me to Kenya. I started working. The first thing I did was I started an organization in Turkey called Beyulu Muteve, and I went through an au pair. Basically, I tutored. I went there to tutor, just to like save up some money, and then I was gonna hitchhike to India through Pakistan. I had always had an interest in Islam culture, probably because I came from a place where well, yeah, my conservative father, thought that we should drop a bomb on that part of the world. So he did well. He did well, but we weren't. It, you always want to understand what your fear is, right? If you're afraid of something and you don't really understand it, you shouldn't simply hate it. You should try to find out as much information about that as you can. They're very hardworking and very honest and disciplined. It's and there's just so much discipline in the culture. That's what I like. I mean, there, you know, I was listening to one of my friends, Matthew. He's a Rendili, a small tribe in northern Kenya. Incredible, incredible
It's
man.
8 o'clock.
I'll send you his interview. It's shortened up a lot, but you can listen to him talk for hours, and he says that the thing about indigenous communities or communities that have retained culture is everyone knows their place in society, right? So as a young woman, you know what's expected of you. All of these class systems in society, everybody knows what's expected of them. and it creates so much discipline and respect between people. So when you live in a culture like the American society where there's no social structure, it's very difficult to know. It's more difficult to know who you are. I think that they're more grounded in who they are because they live in a community that expects them to be something. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it is very humbling to spend time with people that have that much discipline in their societies. So, Mostro, Mostro, what we've done is we decided that all of this money is going to be coming in the next 2 years, right? And what's going to happen? Same thing that always happens in these kind of communities. One person or two people are going to pocket that money, and no development, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be exploiting the money that a nonprofit has put in there, the potential. They've given them a fish, no? They've taught them how to fish, but basically they've just given them a fish. So one person, unless they have some kind of structure, they're just going to eat it. And but the potential is there to learn how to have a continual funds being raised through that project. But the EU didn't set up the community leadership in order to manage those funds. And that's the problem with every organization that goes into these indigenous communities and builds a well or starts a organization for educational development or teaching people about farming. No, it's being operated, but the thing is that the money, there's no long-term sustainability unless they know how to take that money and what to invest it in. They don't need a water drilling rig. They have a river running through most of them, a big river. what they uh, what they really need is what we talked about. What my future vision is I want to start off with a software program that takes in, like, basically is connected to all the microchips. Okay, so basically, right now you have all of these different Maasai communities, like different villages around, but they're all connected. They're all from the Puruko, the same clan, and they communally manage that land together. And they used to have elders. The Maasai used to have elders that manage the grazing, right? The elders would say, we're going to graze here for this many months, and then we're going to move to this area. We're going to stay there for 2 weeks, and we're going to set this grass aside because it needs to. Yeah, but they had a hierarchy, and they had a really, really sophisticated leadership. Like they even controlled disease spreading. Like they would quarantine wild animals from keeping them from spreading disease to other wild animals. I mean, that's how much, like, how sophisticated their management system was. So after colonization ended, during colonization, the British society and the Dutch said, okay, leave these Maasai alone. They're a noble savage. They have a system that's working. They're not savages, They're not barbaric. They have a working system, and they're preserving the wildlife in these areas. So they actually, you had to have a permit to go in when the colonization was in place. You couldn't just go and visit these indigenous people, and they didn't allow any other tribes to move there. After colonization ended, they went in and completely broke down the tribal structure because they were afraid that they were too powerful. Different communities. What? This was 1978, I believe, when colonization ended. I want to be wrong on that. Yeah, and that's since the massive amount of climate change has taken place. Yeah, 1970. but I think it was a bit later when 419. Yeah, like Jomo Kenyatta 1978. So, anyways, when that system was eroded, their entire structure, like their entire community cultural structure started to erode. Because when you don't have the class system and you don't have, it's not a class system, it's an age set system. When the elders aren't commanding what's happening, the most knowledgeable people on pastoralism, then you have the whole system breaks down. And what's happening right now is they used to properly manage their cattle. Just like holistic land management, it's very similar. It's how they used to manage their cattle. But after decolonization took place and they started subdividing the land, people started herding their cows separately. And very large bomas, there used to be 100 huts in a boma. There used to be huge communities that lived together. A boma is a village, but it's actually a circle of huts. There used to be 100 huts. Every hut is a family. So you imagine you have huge people living together with all of their cattle together in the center. After decolonization, they started spreading out because the government told them, okay, that's your land now, that's your land now. And this is your leader. And they brought politicians in. So the people that were the most corrupt, that learned how to use the system became politicians and exploited all of their fellow tribesmen. And that is the system that's still standing today. So, but there are still communally owned land, but the elders aren't managing the cattle holistically anymore. No, because, but the thing is that if you did that, someone else is just going to stand up. If you don't have the leadership of the community reestablished, you're always going to have somebody exploiting the population. So that's what we're doing in Mosoro, is we have talked to all of the most respected people of the community, and we have had them establish their own leadership committee, their own holistic management committee. And what it is every single community, the entire community selected 2 people to represent them. No, it's not the counties. This is the clan areas. These are areas of Mosoro. Mosoro is a communally owned land, and there are different sections, right? There's 4 sections of Mosoro, and there's a subsection. So they have elected 13 people. Now, there's 13 people that are sitting on that holistic management board. And it's like the traditional oligarchy of elders. And these are the people that we are going to train in holistic management. Those are and they are true servants to society. And also, the local governance, everyone recognizes them as a legal entity. They're not a nonprofit. They're not some kind of club. They're a legal entity to represent that communally owned land. And we want to continue to give them more power. And our first project is to build them of course, we need to come in and do the holistic management. But in order to properly manage the systems, they need to have an office. And they need to have staff. So these 13 members consist of 2 members from each area. And then they have a chairman that they've elected. So their chairperson, yes, it's done. All of this is established. Like the committee is established. Everybody's selected. They've donated an area of land to build the holistic management center on. And all the holistic management center is going to be mud hut on steroids. We're going to build it like a traditional mud hut, but we're going to add adobe and some other elements to make it stronger in structure. We'll put a tin roof on it so that it lasts longer. And also, we are going to plaster the entire inside, put concrete on the floor, because there'll be computers, laptops inside. So, but it's only going to cost $8,000 to build the building. What is that? That's not. No, I just need one. I just need one. And what it is, it's a boardroom that can sit 13 people with an area, a projector, so you can come in and do presentations, interactive presentations, trainings with the elders in that area. And then we're going to have 3 offices inside this small building. They don't have to be big offices. They're basically like cubicles. One for a secretary. They need to have a secretary. And what the secretary does is we're reestablishing the border of that communally owned land. Right now, a lot of people come in to exploit them. They sell them bad veterinary medicines. They send them this bad medicines like medical. There's people that come into that community and exploit them. Also, people come in, force them to sell their land. Other tribes illegally, basically come in and start living on the land. So they're reestablishing their border. So any organization or anybody that wants to do business has to send a proposal to the Holistic Management Committee. Oh, we'll stay at Elliot's house. Elliot is our community facilitator. So you're not really going to have more than 1 or 2 trainers out in the middle of nowhere in Mosero. So, for example, the person who will do our holistic management training, his name's Simon Kelly. And he's a fantastic man. He's a white Kenyan and a biologist and amazingly knowledgeable. He's lived with pastoral societies in East Africa his entire life. You can just listen to this guy talk for hours. I hope we can meet Simon when you go there because you guys are going to become really good friends. He's one of my best friends. He's an amazing guy. And he will stay there for 2 months while they're doing the training. So, but if Kelly is busy at that point, we have a different list of holistic land management trainers that can do the training. But they will go out and live, like stay at Elliot's home with his family. And Elliot is going to be our community facilitator. He's not sitting on the board just because, like, they would want him to be a chairperson of that board. He is the community facilitator. So what he does is he facilitates all of our programs, and he needs to be the board needs to be non-biased. We can't have the board working for us because they're an independent entity. They're not an ICCS organization. They're their own organization. We are fiscally sponsoring their programs, and a fiscal sponsorship is a short-term sponsorship, and it comes with strings attached. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, this is our plan. We need to lay out a 2-year plan. For 2 years, we're going to sponsor the setup of your office, the training, the holistic land management training, the veterinary medical trainings. We're going to sponsor all kinds of trainings. We're going to microchip all these cattle. We're going to do all this data research over 2 years, right? It's just 2 years that we're going to do this. After 2 years, you need to make sure that the irrigation scheme, that the community is sponsoring all your programs. If not everyone is in consensus that after 2 years this will be self-sponsored, we will not sponsor this. It's in contract. That money from the irrigation scheme will be going to support the entire project. So after 2 years, the project will continue, but ICCS will not be putting any money into it. And there's some places, like in Amboseli is getting huge amounts of money from the park in a settlement. We don't need to put up any money up front for our project in Amboseli. They will entirely self-sponsor it. All we do is provide the trainers, provide support, provides technological support, information that they need. Basically, we will be sponsoring our, I told you about the 3 people that we have in Narok, right? We have 3 people in Narok that are experts. Those are the people that we will be paying as an organization to set up plans. We're just paying them to do research and project development. We won't, in Amboseli, we won't need to sponsor anything. They'll be able to build everything on their own. They have money. If they don't see the value in this, there's no sense of us going in and putting any money forth, because there's lots of communities that are eager to start these kind of programs that have the money. The reason Mosoro is so important is because they're on a timeline to be subdivided. That timeline has been set back a year because of our program. They were going to subdivide this last summer until we initiated the Holistic Management Committee. Now they cannot do anything with subdivision until this committee has seen through their first year of what they're going to do with holistically managing. Yeah, this is what I've accomplished so far. It's not just a year, but it's a year to show them that there's a future for pastoralism on that land. But I really think that the seeds that we've laid in the elders and the youth seeing them come together, when the youth see leadership, they will follow. But when they don't see any hope, how can you expect them not to just want to cash out? But we just have to show them that, hey, look at the money that's going to come in from this irrigation scheme. I don't know. Mostly Maasai music. Gospel music. They're gospel music fans. Those are the most famous people in Kenya, gospel musicians. They're also some of the most corrupt individuals, from my experience, gospel musicians. Praise the Lord. Give me money. So that project. So, do you have any questions about the project in Mosoro? So you understand what we're setting up there, how it's being set up, the importance of it. So Mosoro is just one project, right? We're also going to be working with them in Mara, the people that I told you about that are already doing holistic management. We're going to help them with the same thing, microchipping, mesh networking. We want to create as much data as possible. Just like Nigel says, we want to create as much data. So I want to tell you about the technological side, the software side of what I want to do in Mosoro. And this is more theory than the actual holistic management on the ground programs that are already set in place. It doesn't matter how much we regreen. If it's from word of mouth, if we're not collecting all of that data, if people can't see, you can take a picture of before and after, but you can't prove that it was the cattle that did that unless you have the data to prove it. They could just say, oh, maybe more water came this year. Even if there was less rainfall, they can credit that to anything. But that's the point. If you don't have the data, they can credit the regeneration to or the regreening to absolutely anything. Natural capital, East Africa? Yeah, it's natural capital. But a lot of the data that they've created, just like ILRI and other organizations, which if you're working under contract, you don't own any of the research that you've done. So a lot of companies like ILRI go in, they do a ton of research, and then they sell that data to like Equity Bank or World Bank for insurance policies. So basically, what I want to do, first thing is set up a mesh network. So one of the biggest issues in Mosuro is they don't have telephone connection. There's no telephone pole. There's no connectivity. So it's really difficult for you to bring in technological solutions when you don't have connection to the internet or you can't call them. It's difficult. So, but it's well, I'm no expert on the subject, but I've spoken with Dr. Paul. I've heard his last name. Who developed the technology? He's from Australia, and they actually developed it for natural disasters when telephone poles are taken out. So well, the biggest issue with what happens after an earthquake is you don't know whether your family's alive or dead and you have no way to call them. So they developed a technology where they can drop down telephones and extenders basically, where they can use one Wi-Fi connection in order to use phones as routers. Basically, the phone is a information router. So all you have to do is pick up the telephone and call. But it makes you it's you're able to use like one signal over large areas just by using telephones and extenders. And it's really cheap technology. So what I want to do is I want to bring a mesh network to Mosero. So we have to look at, and I can get you in contact with Brandon Barney. He's the guy who I spoke to about developing this mesh network in Mosero, Brandon Barney. And he's very familiar with the technology and how much it will take. The only thing we need to make sure is that all of these people have 3G phones. And a lot of people already possess 3G phones that live there, even though they don't have network because they'll go to the peak of a mountain and they will check their Facebook. Oh, that's wonderful. See, and it's not like these people don't have money for those products. They will sell a goat and buy a phone. If we show them a list, if we bring a pamphlet like and get so many orders, you can take their cash in advance. They will trust you, and you can send just a box, a ton of phones to this place. People will buy the phones, and it's not that difficult to even have old 3G phones donated. It's none of those are a big issue. You're talking about 3,000 phones. You don't think we can get 3,000 phones? That's not a big deal. So, and the technology on the side, all you're doing is downloading the software. So we can either make a deal with Dr. Paul or we can develop our own mesh network, which the technology is not that complicated. It would be really great. I can get a conference with all three of us and talk to Barney, Brandon Barney, about the technology. And also, Brandon Barney had Mr. Dr. Paul Gardner Stephen on his show. Brandon Barney runs a technology radio station in LA called Digital Culture. Of the radio station? I can Google it really fast. Oh, I'll get in touch with him. He met he we went down to LA and he met John. He met Tubala. So he's eager to be involved. I'm sure that he will make time to do a conference with us. And he's interested in open source, and he's a very interesting guy to also have involved in what we're doing. This is his website. You can check out. And these are all, like, he's interviewed, I mean, there's a massive list of very interesting, famous people that he's interviewed. Okay, so back to the mesh networking. So basically, if the technology is there, this is my vision. Being able to see exactly within like a 5-foot radius where every cow is at all times. Not every cow, all stock. Microchipping all stock, knowing exactly where how many there are, their temperatures, their internal temperature. So we'll be able to actually see when a cow's getting sick. And before they even show signs or any symptoms of that sickness, we can have them quarantined. With mesh networking, you're able to use a lot of different types of internal microchips that they use in, for example, in dogs. And there are cheap cattle microchips, but I haven't been able to find, like, I haven't exactly priced it out. Okay, perfect. So there is like the simple microchips that will just interact with the Wi-Fi where you can see location, but it would be very nice to be able to see the internal temperature. So we could train our elders. All we would have to do is bring in one trainer to sit down with those 13 individuals and have an extensive training course, have them get the equipment, and I mean, we have to be able to utilize them. They need to be self-sustainable. We can't bring in a huge, massive team to do that work. It has to be an initiative that they take. Exactly. So they have to learn how to do absolutely everything on their own. The reason that not every program that we do, we have to microchip all the cows. The reason that we are microchipping all the cows in this project, or that it's a priority, is to create that data. We need that data. We need to be able to show that data to influence policy, to get more funding. I mean, once we've created the data in one place, we don't really need to do it in every single neighboring community. If we go to South Africa, yeah, we need to do it again because there's different vegetation and there's different types of cows that impact the land differently. So it really, we're not going to have to microchip or create all this data in every place that we go. Of course. So, all right, I trust you. So there's a little bit more to the microchipping though, because we can't simply know where the cows are at all times. That doesn't create enough data. We also have to know how they're impacting the land that they're the grazing program that we've set up. Well, of course, that's another more data that needs to be collected. So what they do in Ilingwezi is they do something called transects. So they take 100-yard rope, they take a 1 hectare. So they take 100 meters by 100 meters, right? And they run a rope down each way, a cross section. They do a cross section, and then they have someone physically there that is trained in collecting this kind of data, and they take a meter stick every like I think it's every half meter, and they set it across, and then within like every 6 inches, they collect all of the data on that place. So they say, okay, this is how many types of vegetation are within 6 inches from this spot. This is a different animal life. This is how hard the ground is. They basically collect everything about that hectare of land. And yeah, of course. I mean, there has to be some kind of technology that's been done, but you have to know, how can you have a computer program that can recognize every single type of life form that's on that land? If you could just take a picture of that area, but that's still a lot of images to be corresponded into software. Like this is a numbering system that they've created to do transects. And Richard can tell you more about how they collect that data and how they put it into the software that they're using. But I want to be able to correspond the transect data with the microchip data. So we can see, like, on a monthly basis, how the cows are impacting the vegetation in real time. Well, they just started. That's another wonderful thing about the irrigation scheme that's gone in, because it's prompted a group of women to start actually growing hay and setting it aside to sell it back during the dry season, which I would like to also bring these women into the holistic management project and have them benefiting from their little business venture that they're starting. If you get tired of listening, I can talk about this all day. This is my passion. I mean, I'm not an expert. I've been doing research for 2 years, and it's been a roller coaster. But I think that the progress that we've made in Mosero is it's really phenomenal. Having the community that eager to start this kind of program, and having that much trust within a community. If Elliot goes into that community and tells them that you can't get Maasai to microchip their cows other places. It's sacred, you know? It's very difficult. You have to have so much trust built in the community because they've been exploited so severely. So as a white person going in there and telling them you should do this, you're going to have issues in any community you go in unless you have someone in that community who will represent you that they trust completely. This is the thing is holistic management is just it's just blossoming. You know what I mean? It hasn't even it's an industry that's waiting to grow. And you that was one of my first things with Simon is originally my original plan was to be a cheerleader for Natural Capital Staff. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go in and create documentaries and shake my pom poms. To go from a small town. Yours is more impressive. You know, people are becoming more international now that they spend so much time on the internet. I'm surprised every single time I talk to my family. They are more knowledgeable than the last time I spoke with them about international politics and about culture and geography. It's incredible how fast people are expanding their mental capacity. You have like a Pakistani hostel that you're running? Really? I think that it's rare for a reason, so that when you do have those kind of cultural exchanges, that you know how you're going to bring this person into your life, or you see the potential and growth in that relationship. If we had these kind of cultural exchanges all the time, you wouldn't know you when it's yeah, exactly. When it's real and when it's not, you wouldn't know. Because I have a lot of intellectual conversations, but people's eyes glaze over when I start to talk about. Not yet. Let me just. That's not very nice. Just clear out. I think you got a pretty good understanding of the entire construct of the organization and what we're trying to accomplish. The only thing is like my future vision, which is a bit idealistic. I'd like to eventually see a resource-based economics software program that's initiated with just this data, right? We're just doing pastoral data, then we go into agriculture data, and eventually we put in market data, right? What are the markets for all these products? And you have a computer program that's calculating all of these different variables and coming up with the best possible um, program plan or infrastructural development plan for a community. That's the it just when I was looking at it, like this is how I got involved in this. Is I was looking at the world and the entire world system, and I watched. I sent you that link, the story of stuff. I think I've watched it 100 times, but knowing that we have we live on a finite planet, and you can't run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely. That's the point. Like that is the only point. It's not saying that capitalism is evil because personally, I don't think that anything that's brought us to what we are right now is evil. It's just a concession, you know, it's something that's a continuation that's happening. You can't hate anything that's happened in the past that's brought us to where we are. You just have to look at the current situation of this planet and say, what's the next step, you know, for our species? We're losing 27,000 species a year, extinct from this planet. And at some point, we have to be like, whoa, like, at what point have we dug the hole too deep that we're not going to be able to climb out? Maybe we won't get there in my lifetime, but maybe we will. But the fact is, we need to start laying down some kind of structured plan and talking about resource economics, talking about building net zero societies and underwater cities, all that's fine and dandy. But unless you create some data, November 11th, I turned 24. Yeah. I think not. I have a lot more to learn. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm in over my head, but I'm excited. I'm excited because I've been pushing this forward and pushing this forward with I've had people come in and go, and I feel like they see a, a sliver of the vision, you know? But the vision isn't just to help indigenous people, it's to use their closed economic societies because they have a closed economy to create the kind of data that we need to understand how to sustainably develop resources. That's all it is. I think you need to come in and experience because it's so hard to understand what it's like to be in the presence of an indigenous society, to live with them, to be on their schedule, to it's that is an invitation. It's definitely an invitation. I think it's an important aspect of the next step forward. I think that after I come down there and we get the funds, when we go back to Mosero, I think you need to sit down with Elliot and Pario and Matthew and definitely Richard and just see the whole project as a whole. And I know that for profiting, you know, starting. You're going to see so much potential for for-profit companies. You're not even know what to do, and be like, wow, you're going to be just pulled in so many different directions of all the money that's there to be made because Africa is an untouched, in many ways, gold mine. The resources and the people, and that's actually I think that if we've covered basically what I want to do with the organization, that we start off with Mosero. We look at the best next place to start it. And maybe even before the 2 years is up, we initiate another project in Ilingwezi or another area county. So next thing that I want to talk about, just to close up the organization, like I think that enjoy to just kind of close the whole conversation on the organization. Well, we can answer any last questions that you have about the structure. But as far as expansion, what I want to be in 5 years is I don't want to just focus entirely on East Africa. Because as an organization, if we want to get really big grants, we need to be collecting data on different continents. The next place I want to go is Mongolia because they are the largest pastoral nation. So we it's about collecting the data, and then my position, what I want to do is I want to do research. I want to of course work where I'm needed, and right now I'm needed for fundraising, which I mean I can kiss ass. I'm not bad at that. But I'm I'm better at understanding pastoral cultures and going in because as a woman, and especially a young woman, I'm non-threatening. People have don't have a problem with bringing me into their communities. It's easy for them to accept me because they don't feel like I'm going to exploit them. And that's one reason I've had so much success with the Maasai because as a young white woman, they don't see me as a threat. But I want to travel to pastoral communities all over the world and do research and bring the technology of holistic land management to people on different continents and expand this organization until we're working with indigenous pastoralists all over the world and we're regreening the planet one community at a time. Oh my gosh, come in as God. In Mongolia, I'm going to. I want to fly to Moscow. We in Mongolia, I don't know if you're up for a 3 month horse. Can you ride on horseback for 3 months? All right, if you're up, so I want to fly to Moscow, and I want to take the Trans-Siberian Railway all the way to the capital of Mongolia. Right? Was that sound fun? And then just about a half an hour outside the capital, you can go and buy horses. They're really cheap, a couple $100 a piece. I'll get a horse and two pack horses. We'll have 6 horses, and we will have 6 horses, and we will hit the road, and we will go, and of course we'll have people that we've communicated with, and we will go and just do as much research about holistic land management, about desertification. It's not dangerous. There's no Mongols. I mean, you're not going to run into Genghis Khan. You can carry a machete, a sword. Whoosh. Oh, ugh. That just reminds me of all the scary movies where people get hacked to death. I hitchhiked in Maasai lands where there's elephants and giraffes on the side of the road and dragons. Giraffes, dragons. So, do you have any other questions about the organization or structure or people that are involved? I think that what I should do is when you post this, I will put a list of all the things that were referenced, the different the conservancies, the Zebra Trust, the 3 individuals that are sitting currently on our board in Kenya, and Brandon Barney, of course, for the mesh networking. I will put all those links when you send me the link to. It's the radio station, but I will send you specifically the interview that he had about mesh networking, so you can listen to him interview um, Dr. Paul Stephen. I would actually like to start another Skype conversation after this one. It's still early, it's a little late there. I don't know if you're up for it. About specifically, we were talking about the development of communication technology from remote areas in Africa. And I think that should be on a different Skype call. But okay, great. All right, I'm going to grab another cup of tea.